concerning the Greek words used to refer to a burial place or tomb. A.T. Robertson in Word Pictures in the New Testament 1932, Volume V, p. 87 states. Defoe's grave presents the notion of burial thapto, to bury as in mat. 23. 27. Namaon from Naamai, Mimsko, to remind is a memorial, sepulchre as a monument. Related to Namaon is the word emenima, which appears to have a corresponding meaning, referring also to a memorial or record of a thing or a dead person, then a sepulchral monument, and hence a tomb. Vine's Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testament Words, 1981, Volume 2, p. 173. Such a tomb might be an excavated grave in the ground or, as was often the case among the Hebrews, might be a natural cave or a rock-cut vault. Compare Acts 7. 16 and GE 23. 19, 20. As has been seen above, whereas the word Tapho's grave gives emphasis to the idea of burial, the words Emenima tomb and Emeni middle.Maon memorial tomb lay stress on the thought of preserving the memory of the deceased person. These latter words, therefore, appear to carry a greater idea of permanence than Tapho's. They are related to the Latin word monumentum. It seems evident that Jewish burial tombs were customarily built outside the cities, a major exception being those of the kings. The references to such tombs in the Christian Greek scriptures would all appear to place them outside the cities, except the reference to David's tomb at Acts 2. 29. Being thus withdrawn and also being avoided by the Jews, because of the ceremonial uncleanness connected with them, the areas in which such tombs were located were at times the haunt of crazed or demonized persons. Mount 8. 28. Mr. 5. 5. Not on 8. While serving as a remembrance of the deceased person, the Jewish memorial tombs in general do not appear to have been ornate or ostentatious. Some were so unpretentious and inconspicuous that men might walk upon them without being aware of it. Lu 11. 44. Although it was the custom of the pagan peoples around them to make their tombs as lavish as their circumstances allowed, the early Jewish tombs that have been found are notable for their simplicity. It was because the Jews' worship allowed no veneration of the dead and did not foster any ideas of a conscious existence after death in a spirit world, ideas such as those held by the Egyptians, Canaanites, and Babylonians. Thus, while many critics make the claim that the worship of the nation of Israel was, from early times, syncretistic, that is, resulting from the union of conflicting beliefs and having developed by the addition of tenets and practices from earlier religions, the fundamental resistance to such religious corruption is evidenced once again in the plainness of their tombs. Deviations, however, did occur. Jesus shows that in his day it was the practice of the scribes and Pharisees to decorate the memorial tombs of the prophets and others. Mount 23. 29, 30. Under Greek and Roman influence, the tendency among the wealthy at that time was toward more pretentious tombs. Aside from the tomb of John the Baptist, Mr. 6. 29. The principal tombs considered in the Christian Greek scriptures are those of Lazarus and of Jesus. Lazarus' tomb was typically Jewish, being a cave with a stone lying against the opening, which opening may have been relatively small, if we conclude that similar tombs found in Palestine are comparable. The context would indicate it was outside the village. Joe 11. O textoi acute muritra longo. Memphis 369 tombs that were opened as the result of an earthquake occurring at the time of Jesus' death has caused considerable discussion, some holding that a resurrection occurred. However, a comparison with the texts concerning the resurrection makes clear that these verses do not describe a resurrection, but merely a throwing of bodies out of their tombs, similar to incidents that have taken place in more recent times, as in Ecuador in 1949 and again in Sunzon, Colombia, in 1962, when 200 corpses in the cemetery were thrown out of their tombs by a violent earth tremor. El Tiempo, Bogotá, Colombia, July 31, 1962. Remembrance by God. In view of the underlying thought of remembrance associated with Emeni middle.Maon, the use of this word rather than tar-phos at John 5. 28 with regard to the resurrection of all those in the memorial tomb seems particularly appropriate and contrasts sharply with the thought of complete repudiation and effacement from all memory as represented by Gehenna. Mount 10. 28. 23. 33. Mr. 9. 43. The importance attached to burial by the Hebrews. See burial. Burial places is indicative of their concern that they be remembered, primarily by Jehovah God in whom they had faith as the rewarder of those earnestly seeking him. Heb 11. 1, 2, 6 inscriptions of the tombs of Israelite origin are very rare and, when found, often consist of only the name. The outstanding kings of Judah left no magnificent monuments with their praises and exploits engraved thereon, as did the kings of other nations. Thus it seems evident that the concern of faithful men of ancient times was that their name be in the book of remembrance described at Malachi 3. 16. Compare EC 7. 1. See name. The basic idea of remembrance involved in the original Greek words for tomb or memorial tomb also gives added meaning to the plea of the evildoer impaled alongside Jesus to remember me when you get into your kingdom. Lu 23. 42. Memphis. One of the capitals of ancient Egypt, identified with the ruins at Metrine, about 23 kilometers 14 miles of Cairo, on the W side of the Nile River. Memphis was for long the most important city in Lower Egypt, that is, the Delta region and a small section to the east thereof. At Hosea 9. 6 the city is called Meph in the Hebrew text, rendered Memphis in most English translations. Elsewhere it is referred to by the Hebrew Neph. Issa 19. 13. J2. 16. 44. 1. 46. 14. 19. As 30. 13. 16. History. According to legend, recounted by Greek historian Herodotus 2, 99, Memphis was established by a ruler named Mans. No historical evidence has been found, however, for this supposed founder of the first dynasty of Egyptian rulers. Memphis' geographic situation was ideally suited for a capital city of this land of the Nile. Lying just a little south of the apex of the delta, that is, the point where the Nile River divides up into its branches, it could exercise control not only over the delta region to the north but also over the traffic on the Nile. Desert and mountains made difficult any approach to the city from the W, and the Nile itself and the hills beyond served as a protection from the E. Thus, Memphis, on the border between upper southern and lower northern Egypt, anciently held the key to all Egypt, much as modern Cairo does today in a nearby location. Commercial. The city was a great commercial center throughout its history, declining only after the Greek conquest, when Alexandria on the northern coast became the country's most thriving port. According to some historians, Memphis became widely reputed for its glass manufacture, Rome being a principal importer of its wares. Acacia trees were also cultivated in the area to supply wood for making furniture, ships for Egypt's navy, and military weapons. Politically, also, Memphis held great prominence, particularly during the period Egyptologists call the Old Kingdom o Textoi Acute Muritra Longo. Memphis 370 accompanied by mourning. Compare to Kai 2. 23. Issa 22. 12. In the case of both the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom Judah, Egypt, as here represented by Memphis and Tabans, proved to be a futile source of hope for aid and support, while at the same time showing itself ready to exploit God's covenant people for selfish advantage. Ho 7. 11. Issa 30. 1-3. 2 Kai 23. 31-35. Religious. Memphis was a center of religion and of learning in Egypt, but back in the 8th century BCE Isaiah foretold that the vaunted wisdom of the princes, perhaps priestly princes of Memphis, would fail and Egypt would be misled. Issa 19. 13 Such counselors evidently fostered a false sense of security in Egypt as regards the aggressive power of Assyria. Memorials of Ethiopian King Tirhakah's reign over Egypt have been found at Memphis. Though Tirhakah managed to survive his encounter with Assyrian King Sennacherib in Canaan 732 BCE to Kai 19. 9, Sennacherib's son Esarhaddon later shattered the Egyptian army, forcing them to retreat to Memphis. Esarhaddon's own record of the subsequent conflict reads: I laid siege to Memphis, his Tirhakah's royal residence, and conquered it in half a day by means of mines, breaches and assault ladders. I destroyed it, tore down its walls and burnt it down. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, p. 293. Apparently a few years later Egypt's forces retook Memphis, massacring the Assyrian garrison. But Ashurbanipal, son of Esarhaddon, marched into Egypt and drove the rulers out of Memphis and back up the Nile southward. When Assyria went into decline in the latter part of the 7th century BCE, Memphis came back under full Egyptian control. Following the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar's desolation of Judah in 607 BCE, Jewish refugees fled into Egypt, taking up residence in Memphis and other cities. Jah 44. 1. Through his prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel, Jehovah condemned them to disaster and foretold that Nebuchadnezzar would strike Egypt a devastating blow, with Memphis not experiencing the full force of the attack. Jah 44. 11-14. 46. 13, 14, 19. As 30. 10-13. The Babylonian attackers of Memphis would confidently attack the city in broad daylight. As 30. 16. Memphis again came in for a severe defeat at the hands of Persian king Cambyses in 525 BCE, thereafter becoming the seat of a Persian satrapy. The city never fully recovered from the effects of this conquest. With the rise of Alexandria under the Ptolemies, Memphis declined steadily and by the 7th century of the Common Era had become vast ruins. Memphis was among the foremost sacred cities of ancient Egypt, along with nearby Heliopolis. Ge 41. 50. Especially important were the shrines dedicated to the Godda and to the sacred bull Apis. The Godda, according to the Memphite theology devised by the priests of Memphis, was the creator, sharing this distinction with other gods such as Thoth, Ra, and Osiris, and his mythological activity apparently was modeled on the actual role of the pharaoh in human affairs. Classical historians describe the Temple of Ra at Memphis as being periodically enlarged and beautified. Enormous statues adorned it. The Apis bull, a specially marked live bull, was kept at Memphis and worshipped as the incarnation of the god Osiris, though in certain legends it is also connected with the Godda. At its death, public mourning was carried on, and an impressive burial of the bull was made at nearby Saqqara. When the tomb there was opened in the 19th century, investigators found the embalmed bodies of over 60 bulls and cows. The selection of a new Apis bull and its enthronement at Memphis was an equally elaborate ceremony. This worship may have influenced the rebellious Israelites in their idea of worshipping Jehovah through a golden calf. X 32. 4, 5. The worship of the foreign goddess Astarte textoi acute muritra longo, menstruation 371 mukin middle. Mukan. The chief spokesman for the 7 Persian princes on the occasion that Vashti refused to obey King Ahasuerus. As 1. 13-15. Mukan's opinion was that Vashti had wronged not only the king, but also the princes and the people of the empire, and that she should therefore be removed as queen, so that all wives of the empire might learn to be obedient to their husbands. The king and the other princes agreed with Mukan, and a royal decree to this effect was written among the unchangeable laws of the Medes and Persians. As 1. 16-22. These 7 princes of Persia and Media were versed in law and legal cases. They were the king's closest advisors, sitting first in the kingdom. As 1. 13, 14. That the Persian court had such a council of 7 is confirmed by Ezra 7. 14. Menahem men one who comforts. Son of Gideon king of Israel for 10 years from about 790 BCE. Upon learning that Shallum had assassinated King Zechariah, Menahem went from Tirzah to Samaria and killed the assassin there. He then assumed rulership. Evidently during the early part of his reign Menahem struck down Tirzah and all that was in it and its territory out from Tirzah, because it did not open up. The town was apparently reluctant to open its gate to him. LXX, VG, harsh treatment was meted out to the populace. All its pregnant women he ripped up. 2 Kai 15. 10, 13-17. Menahem did what was bad in Jehovah's eyes. He promoted calf worship, failing to depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the first king of the 10-tribe kingdom. During his reign, King Tiglath-Pileser III invaded Israel, and Menahem was forced to pay the Assyrian monarch 1,000 talents of silver. $6,606,000. He acquired this sum by imposing an assessment of 50 silver shekels upon each of the valiant, mighty men of Israel. Since a talent of silver equaled about 3,000 shekels, the silver was obtained from about 60,000 persons. Menahem gave the silver to the Assyrian king, that his hands might prove to be with him to strengthen the kingdom in his own hand. Upon receiving this amount, Pur withdrew from the land. 2 Kai 15. 19, 20. Menahem is named in an inscription of Tiglath-Pileser III as Menahem of Samaria Me'anahiami al-Samirian, being listed there, along with Syrian king Rezin Rahinu and king Hiram Hiruamu of Tyre, different from the Hiram of David's day, as a ruler from whom that Assyrian monarch claims to have received tribute. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, pages 282, 283. Menahem died about 781 BCE and his son Pekah succeeded him on Israel's throne. 2 Kai 15. 22. Menmieni. The opening word of the cryptic message miraculously inscribed on the plaster wall of King Belshazzar's banquet hall in Babylon on the night of October 5, 539 BCE Gregorian calendar, just before the city's fall to the Medes and Persians. According to Daniel, who was empowered by Jehovah to read the inscription and give its interpretation, the writing read: Men, Tekel and Parsin. Dar 5. 25. The inscription evidently consisted only of consonants and required intelligent and proper vocalization, as well as correct interpretation. The words themselves literally mean a mina, a shekel, and half shekels. In giving the accurate interpretation, Daniel said first, "This is the interpretation of the word. Men, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and has finished it." Dar 5. 26. Even that portion of the message should have made things clear to King Belshazzar. Jehovah had dethroned mighty Nebuchadnezzar, who has been more powerful than Belshazzar. So he should be able to cut down the number of days of Belshazzar's kingship and those of his coreginator father, Nabonidus. Jehovah could bring the dynasty to its end. The word men appeared twice in the inscription, perhaps because the message applied to both rulers in the kingdom of Otextoi acute Miritra Longo. Meneleth 372 Hebrew term, dar middle. Where, which can denote illness. Var 5. 17, is translated menstruating woman. The 15. 33. Is 30. 22. Menstruation is also meant by the phrase the customary thing with women. GE 31. 35. Unclean under law. According to the Mosaic law, a woman was considered unclean for 7 days during normal menstruation. The bed or any other articles upon which the menstruating woman might lie or sit were also rendered unclean. Anyone touching her or items she had made unclean was required to wash his garments and bathe, and that one remained unclean until the evening. If her menstrual impurity came to be upon a man lying down with her, as when, unwittingly, a husband had sexual relations with his wife at the beginning of menstruation, he was rendered unclean for 7 days, and the bed upon which he might lie down was considered unclean. The woman was also viewed as unclean for the duration of an irregular running discharge of blood or a flow longer than her menstrual impurity, at which time she made the articles on which she lay or sat as well as persons touching these items unclean. After the abnormal discharge ceased, she was to count 7 days, and she then became clean. On the 8th day the woman brought 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest, who made atonement for her, presenting one of these creatures to Jehovah as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. The 15. 19-30. See clean, cleanness. If a man and a woman deliberately cohabited during her menstrual impurity, they were cut off in death. Law 18. 19. 20. 18. The prohibiting of sexual union during menstruation probably contributed to health, perhaps preventing, for instance, the occurrence of inflammation in the genital area, simple urethritis. The Israelites also may have been reminded of the sanctity of blood by the law's regulations involving menstruation or blood flow. These rules were not discriminatory against women, for men were subject to uncleanness by discharges to which they were prone. The 15. 1-17 especially did regulations concerning menstruation show Jehovah's consideration for womankind. The Christian husband, though he is not under the law. 6. 14. F2. 11-16, also does well to consider his wife's cycles and vicissitudes, dwelling with her according to knowledge and assigning her honor as to a weaker vessel, the feminine one. 1 P3. 7. Menoth me middle dot Nuhoth resting places. According to the Masoretic text, apparently a Judean family descended through Shobal. 1 ch. 2. 4, 52. But some scholars prefer amending the Hebrew text to read the Manahattites, as in verse 54. J.B. Mo and a Jewish commentary on Chronicles gives the alternate reading who supervised half of the resting places and notes. Shobal was in charge of half the caravan stations in the land of Judah. Cincino Books of the Bible, edited by A. Cohen, London, 1952, p. 15. Monenim, big tree of me middle dot on e middle dot nin those practicing magic. A tree within sight of Shechem, passed by a band of King Abimelech's men before their fight with the landowners of that city. JG 9. 34-37 Big Tree of Monenim translates the Hebrew words e middle dot lon me o middle dot nenim. E middle dot lon refers to big trees in general, and me on nenim is a participle signifying those practicing magic. Cedar 18. 14. The tree may have been so named because Canaanites or apostate Israelites engaged in magical practices there. Some scholars also link the big tree of Monenim with the big trees of Moreh that are similarly described as being in the vicinity of Shechem. Compare GE 12. 6. 35. 4. JG 9. 6. Miono time middle dot ono middle dot I. A descendant of Judah who became father to Ophrah, being either the paternal ancestor of a person named Ophrah or the founder of a place bearing that name. 1 ch. 4. 1, 14. Mephath Mepha middle dot up. A city originally assigned to the Reubenites, but subsequently granted to the Merarite Levites. Jos 13. 15, 18. O textoi acute miritra longo, Merab 373, 2. Son of Jonathan. Grandson of King Saul. When the report about the deaths of Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, Mephibosheth's nurse began to carry the 5-year-old boy and flee in panic. At that time he had a fall and was lamed in both feet. 2 4. For some years thereafter, Mephibosheth lived in the house of Machir the son of Amiel at Lodebar. David learned this from Ziba, a former servant in Saul's house. Doubtless remembering his covenant with Jonathan 1 20. 12-17, 42, David wished to exercise loving kindness toward anyone left over of the house of Saul. Mephibosheth was brought before David, and when the king explained that it was his desire to exercise loving kindness toward Mephibosheth by returning to him all the field of Saul and by having him eat bread at my table constantly, Mephibosheth responded humbly, "What is your servant, that you have turned your face to the dead dog such as I am?" However, in keeping with David's determination in the matter, Ziba and all those dwelling in his house including 15 sons and 20 servants became servants to Mephibosheth, who was given Saul's property. He thereafter resided in Jerusalem and constantly ate at the table of the king. 2 9. When David fled from Jerusalem because of Absalom's conspiracy, he was met by Ziba, who provided him with supplies. Answering David's inquiries as to the whereabouts of Mephibosheth, Ziba said, "There he is dwelling in Jerusalem." For he said, "Today the house of Israel will give back to me the royal rule of my father." At that, the king told Ziba, "Look, yours is everything that belongs to Mephibosheth." 2 16. 1-4 Mephibosheth came to meet David upon the king's return to Jerusalem, the account saying he has not attended to his feet, nor had he attended to his mustache, nor had he washed his garments from the day that the king went away until the day that he came in peace. When David asked why Mephibosheth had not gone with him, Mephibosheth gave the explanation that his servant had tricked him and also said, "So he slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is as an angel of the true God, that is, he would see the matter in its true light." David evidently recognized Mephibosheth's innocence, altering his first decree by saying, "You and Ziba should share in the field." To this Mephibosheth replied, "Let him even take the whole, now that my lord the king has come in peace to his house." 2 19. 24-30. Compare PI 18. 17. 25. 8-10. When the Gibeonites sought the death of Saul's descendants to atone for that king's evil attempt against them, David felt compassion for Mephibosheth because of the oath of Jehovah between David and Jonathan, and spared Mephibosheth. 2 Samuel 21. 7, 8. The scriptures provide no further information about Mephibosheth, though Saul's family continued in existence to a later generation through Mephibosheth's son Micah. 2 Samuel 9. 12. 1 Ch 9. 39-44. Evidently Mephibosheth also had a name Merib-Baal, as 1 Chronicles 8. 34 and 9. 40 would indicate. Merab from a root meaning become many abundant. The older of King Saul's 2 daughters. 1 Samuel 14. 49. Saul had evidently promised to give one of them in marriage to the man who would defeat Goliath. 1 Samuel 17. 25, and it may have been for that reason that he offered Merab to David. After his encounter with Goliath, David proved to be a prudent and successful fighter against the Philistines, so much so that Saul was scared of him, while the people of Israel and Judah loved him. 1 Samuel 18. 15, 16. In offering Merab to David as a wife, Saul urged him on to continued valor, while thinking to himself, "Do not let my hand come to be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines come to be upon him," hoping for David's death in battle. David, in humility, hesitated to accept the offer to become the son-in-law of the king. As matters turned out, Saul did not keep his promise, and Merab textually acute Meritra longo, Moriah 374 early, and her sister Michal, rejected by David and childless, undertook the rearing, or bringing up, of the 5 boys. Hence, they were spoken of as Michal's children instead of those of Merab. In harmony with this view of 2 Samuel 21. 8, the Bible translation by Isaac Leeser speaks of the 5 sons of Michal, the daughter of Saul, whom she had brought up for Adriel, and a footnote thereon states, "As Michal was David's wife." But the children were those of Merab, the oldest daughter of Saul, who were probably educated by her sister. The Targums read, "The 5 sons of Merab which Michal, Saul's daughter, brought up with Sheba." Other factors, not revealed in the scriptures, may have a bearing on the way the text was set down. Moriah possibly, rebellious. A priest and head of the paternal house of Sarah in the days of Joachim after the Jews returned from Babylonian exile. Ne 12. 12. Moriah possibly, rebellious ones. 1. A priestly descendant of Aaron through Eleazar, called the son of Zeruiah. 1 Ch 6. 3-7, 52. Es 7. 3, 4. 2. A priest identified as the son of Ahitub, a leader of the house of the true God and who appears to be the father of Zadok. 1 Ch 9. 10, 11. Ne 11. 11. 3. Founder of a priestly paternal house, the head of which was Hilkiah in the days of Joachim. Ne 12. 12, 15. Moriath, which was the name of this house following the Jews' return from Babylonian exile, may be a variation of Bemuth, the name of one of the priests accompanying Zerubbabel to Jerusalem in 537 BCE. Ne 12. 1, 3. Merari from a root meaning be bitter. Son of Levi and brother of Gershon, Gershom and Kohath. Ge 46. 11. 1 Ch 6. 1, 16. Since Merari is mentioned in 3rd place among Levi's sons, he may have been the youngest. He was one of the 70 members of Jacob's household who came into Egypt. Ge 46. 8, 11, 26, 27. Merari had 2 sons, Mali and Mushi. 6. 19. 1 Ch 6. 19, and was the founder of the Merites, one of the 3 main Levite families. New 26. 57. Merites rights of belonging to Merari. One of the 3 major families of Levites, descending from Levi's son Merari through Mali and Mushi. X 6. 16, 19. New 3. 20. 26. 57, 58. The first census of the Israelites in the wilderness listed 6,200 Merarite males from a month old upward, 3,200 of these being from 30 to 50 years of age and entering the service group for the service in the tent of meeting. New 3. 33, 34. 4. 42-45 Their chieftain then was Zuriel, and their encampment was on the inside of the tabernacle. New 3. 35 During the wilderness trek the three-tribe division of Judah was first to pull away from an encampment. Then the Gershonites and Merarites as carriers of the tabernacle pulled away, followed by the three-tribe division of Reuben and then the Kohathite Levites. New 10. 14-21 The Merarites were in charge of the panel frames, bars, pillars, and socket pedestals of the tabernacle, as well as all its utensils and all its service, in addition to the pillars, socket pedestals, tent pins, and tent cords of the courtyard. New 3. 36, 37 To move these heavy objects, they were supplied with 4 wagons and 8 cattle. In the wilderness they and the Gershonites were under the hand of Aaron's son Itamar. New 7. 6-8 In the division of the Promised Land under Joshua, 12 cities were assigned to the Merarites, 4 each from the tribal territories of Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. One of these, Ramoth in Gilead in the territory of Gad, was a city of refuge. Jos 21. 7, 34-40. 1 Ch 6. 63, 77-81. In David's day 220 Merarites, with Asaiah as their chief, assisted other Levites in bringing the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem from the house of Obed-Edom. 1 Ch 15. 1-6, 25 After the Ark had a resting place, David gave positions for the direction of the singing at the house of Jehovah to certain Merarites. 1 Ch 6. 31, 44-47 Other Merarites O textoi acute muritra longo, Mercy 375 derived from Mar-Middle.Ra, Merat I may point to the intensity of Babylon's rebellion. From the days of its founder Nimrod, Babylon's course was one of rebellion against Jehovah. GE 10. 8-10. Merchant. One who buys and sells or barters with expectation of making a profit. A tradesman or a tradeswoman. The Hebrew term rendered merchant literally refers to one who travels about for commercial purposes. GE 34. 10. FTN. Very early in man's history people became skilled in certain fields of endeavor, specializing in their occupation. GE 4. 20-22 Commerce and trade between them naturally followed, and in the course of events, many individuals worked exclusively as merchants and traders handling a great variety of commodities. By the time Abraham reached Canaan early in the 2nd millennium BCE certain mercantile weights and measures were used and recognized. GE 23. 16 The Mosaic law commanded that the merchant's measurements be standardized and just. De 25. 13-16. PR 11. 1. 20. 10. Mixix. 11. Some merchants were shopkeepers. Others did business in the cities in marketplaces and bazaars. NE 13. 20 Some owned fleets of ships that plied the high seas to bring back valuable cargoes of merchandise from distant lands. PS 107. 23. PR 31. 14 Other traders were travelers who followed the extensive overland trade routes of the ancient world. 1 Chi 10. 14, 15. 2 Ch 9. 13, 14 Joseph was sold by his brothers to such traveling merchants headed for Egypt. GE 37. 25, 28. All the nations, small and great, had their merchants, and through their activity many were made rich. There were the merchants of Ethiopia Issa 45. 14, of Assyria Na 1. 1. 3. 16, of the kingdom of Solomon 1 Chi 10. 28. 2 Ch 1. 16, and of Sidon and Tyre is 23. 2, 8. Ezekiel's prophecy describes the city of Tyre as a great commercial center to which the ships and caravans from all parts of the world came and did business. This same prophecy also describes the great variety of merchandise these merchants handled, which enriched this port city, such things as silver, iron, tin, lead, copper articles, horses, mules, ivory, ebony, turquoise, wool, dyed fabrics, corals, rubies, wheat, special foodstuffs, honey, oil, balsam, wine, cassia, cane, garments of woven material, perfumes, precious stones, and gold. As 27. 2, 12-25. The Greek word empo-poros meaning journey refers to a traveling merchant, or one on a journey. An example is the traveling merchant in Jesus' illustration who searched for fine pearls of great price. Mount 13. 45. It is the traveling merchants that the symbolic book of Revelation says are made rich by the great harlot. Babylon the Great, the mother of the harlots, and who weep and mourn over her downfall and destruction. Re 17. 1, 5. 18. 3, 11-15. Babylon the Great also has her own traveling merchants, the top-ranking men of the earth. Re 18. 23. Mercy. An expression of kind consideration or pity that brings relief to those who are disadvantaged. Tender compassion. Also, at times, a lightening of judgment or punishment. Mercy is a frequent translation of the Hebrew kamim and the Greek os verb, eo. An examination of these terms and their usage helps bring out their full flavor and sense. The Hebrew verb sham is defined as meaning to glow, to feel warm with tender emotion. To be compassionate. A Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon, edited by B. Davis, 1957, p. 590 according to lexicographer Gesenius. The primary idea seems to lie in cherishing, soothing, and in a gentle emotion of mind. A Hebrew and English lexicon of the Old Testament, translated by E. Robinson, 1836, p. 939. The term is closely related to the word for womb, or can refer to bowels, which are affected when one feels warm and tender sympathy or pity. Compare Issa 63. 15, 16. J 31. 20. In the scriptures sham is used only once by man toward God, the psalmist saying, O textoi acute miritra longo, mercy 376. Compassion, favor, goodwill. D 13. 17. 30. 3. PS 102. 13. Isra 54. 7-10. 60. 10. His sending his son to be born in Israel was evidence of a coming daybreak of divine compassion and mercy for them. Do 1. 50-58, 72-78. The Greek os conveys some of the sense of the Hebrew kamim. Vine's Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testament Words says, Elios G'1 is the outward manifestation of pity. It assumes need on the part of him who receives it, and resources adequate to meet the need on the part of him who shows it. The verb lia generally conveys the idea of feeling sympathy with the misery of another, and especially sympathy manifested in act. 1981, Volume 3, pages 60, 61. Hence, the blind, the demon-possessed, the leprous, or those whose children were afflicted were among those who evoked the expression of mercy, pity. Mount 9. 27. 15. 22. 17. 15. Mr. 5. 18, 19. Lu 17. 12, 13. In response to the plea, have mercy on us, Jesus performed miracles relieving such ones. He did so, not in a routine, apathetic way, but moved with pity. Mount 20. 31, 34. The Gospel writer here using a form of the verb splagmiddle.my, which is related to splagna, literally meaning intestines. Ac 1. 18. This verb expresses the feeling of pity, whereas os refers to the active manifestation of such pity, hence an act of mercy. Not limited to judicial action. In English the word mercy quite generally conveys the idea of refraining, exercising restraint, such as in the administering of punishment, this restraint being motivated by compassion or sympathy. Thus, it frequently has a judicial flavor, as when a judge shows clemency in softening the judgment upon a wrongdoer. Since God's exercise of mercy is always in harmony with his other qualities and righteous standards, including his justice and trueness. PS 40. 11. Ho 2. 19. And since all men are by inheritance sinful and worthy of receiving sin's payment of death. Row 5. 12. Compare PS 130. 3, 4. Da 9. 18. Tilt 3. 5. It is clear that the pardoning of error, or the lightening of judgment or punishment, is frequently involved in God's exercise of mercy. PS 51. 1, 2. 103. 3, 4. Da 9. 9. Mix 7. 18, 19. However, it can be seen from the preceding information that the Hebrew and Greek terms rachamim, are not limited to forgiveness or restraint in applying a judicial penalty. Pardon of error of itself is not the mercy generally portrayed by these terms, but, rather, such forgiveness opens the way for that mercy. In expressing mercy, God, of course, never ignores his perfect standards of justice, and for this reason he has provided a ransom sacrifice through his Son Jesus Christ, making possible the forgiveness of sins with no violation of justice. Row 3. 25, 26. Mercy, then, most frequently refers, not to a negative action, a holding back as of punishment, but to a positive action, to an expression of kind consideration or pity that brings relief to those who are disadvantaged, in need of mercy. This is well illustrated in Jesus' parable of the Samaritan who saw the traveler lying by the roadside, robbed and beaten. He showed himself neighbor to the man because, moved with pity, he acted mercifully toward him, treating his wounds and caring for him. Luke 10. 29-37. No forgiveness of wrongdoing or judicial proceedings were involved. Hence, the scriptures show that the mercifulness of Jehovah God is not a quality that comes into play only when persons are, in effect, on trial before him because of having committed some particular wrong. Rather, it is a characteristic quality of God's personality, his normal way of reacting toward those in need, a facet of his love. 2 Co 1. 3. 1 Jo 4. 8. He is not like the false gods of the nations. Unfeeling, non-compassionate gods. Instead, Jehovah is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and great in loving kindness. Jehovah is good to all, and his mercies o textoi acute miritra longo. Mercy 377, 11. Or 3. 31-33. It is the hard-heartedness of persons, their obstinacy and refusal to respond to his graciousness and mercifulness, that obliges him to take a different course toward them, causes his mercies to be shut off from flowing toward them. PS 77. 9. J 13. 10, 14. Is the 13. 9. Row 2. 4-11. Not to be presumed upon. While Jehovah has great mercy toward those who draw near to him in sincerity, he will by no means exempt from punishment those who are unrepentant and really deserving of punishment. X 34. 6, 7. A person cannot presume on God's mercy. He cannot sin with complete impunity or be exempted from the natural results or outworking of his wrong course of action. G 6. 7, 8. Compare U 12. 1-3, 9-15. 2 So 12. 9-14. Jehovah may mercifully show patience and long-suffering, giving persons the opportunity to correct their wrong course. Though manifesting disapproval, he may not completely abandon them but may mercifully continue supplying them a measure of aid and direction. Compare NE 9. 18, 19, 27-31. But if they do not respond, his patience has its limits and he withdraws his mercy and acts against them for his own name's sake. Issa 9. 17. 63. 7-10. J 16. 5-13, 21. Compare Lu 13. 6-9. Not governed by human standards. It is not up to humans to try to establish their own standards or criteria by which God should show mercy. from his heavenly vantage point and in harmony with his own good purpose, with his own long-range view of the future and his ability to read the heart, he shows mercy to whom he will show mercy. X 33. 19. Row 9. 15-18. Compare to Chi 13. 23. Mount 20. 12-15. At Romans chapter 11 the apostle discusses God's display of unparalleled wisdom and mercy in giving to the Gentiles an opportunity to enter the heavenly kingdom. The Gentiles were outside the commonwealth of God's nation, Israel, and hence previously not the recipients of the mercies resulting from covenant relationship with God. And they also lived in disobedience to God. Compare 09. 24-26. Ho 2. 23. Paul explains that Israel first had the opportunity but that they were, for the most part, disobedient. This resulted in opening up the way for Gentiles to become part of the promised kingdom of priests and a holy nation. X 19. 5, 6 Paul concludes, for God has shut them all up together, Jews and Gentiles, in disobedience, that he might show all of them mercy. Through Christ's ransom sacrifice, the Adamic sin working in all mankind could be removed for all those exercising faith including Gentiles, and through his death on the torture stake the curse of the law could also be removed from those under it, the Jews, so that all could receive mercy. The apostle exclaims, "Oh, the depth of God's riches and wisdom and knowledge! How unsearchable his judgments are and past tracing out his ways are." Row 11. 30-33. Joe 3. 16. Col 2. 13, 14. Ga 3. 13. Seeking God's mercy. Those desirous of enjoying the flow of God's mercy must seek him, showing the right heart condition by abandoning their wrong ways and harmful thoughts. Isra 55. 6, 7. They must properly fear him and show appreciation for his righteous precepts. PS 103. 13. 119. 77, 156, 157. Lu 1. 50. And if they deviate from the righteous course they have been following, they must not try to cover it over but must confess it and manifest genuine contrition and heartfelt sadness. PS 51. 1, 17. PR 28. 13. Another absolute essential is that they themselves be merciful. Jesus said, "Happy are the merciful, since they will be shown mercy." Mount 5. 7. Gifts of mercy. The Pharisees showed an unmerciful attitude toward others and were rebuked by Jesus with the words, "Go, then, and learn what this means, I want mercy, and not sacrifice." Mount 9. 10-13. 12. 1-7. Compare Ho 6. 6. He placed mercy among the weightier matters of the law. Mount 23. 23 is noted, while such mercy could embrace judicial clemency, such as the Pharisees might have opportunity o textually acute miritra longo, mercy 378 to express doubts. Because these approach the danger of spiritual death, their fellow Christians are exhorted to maintain the flow of mercy to these and help them to avoid a destructive end. While continuing to show mercy to some whose actions have not been proper, they need to be careful not to fall into temptation themselves, being conscious that they must not only love righteousness, but also hate what is bad. Hence their mercy does not imply any condoning of wrong. Jude 22, 23. Compare 1 Joe 5. 16, 17. See gifts of mercy. Mercy exalts triumphantly over judgment. The disciple James states, "For the one that does not practice mercy will have his judgment without mercy." Mercy exalts triumphantly over judgment. Just 2. 13. The context shows that he is developing the thoughts expressed earlier as to true worship, including the expression of mercy in caring for those afflicted, and in not showing favoritism and discriminating against the poor in favor of the rich. Ches 1. 27. 2. 1-9. His following words also indicate this, as they deal with the needs of brothers in a naked state and lacking the food sufficient for the day. Just 2. 14-17 Hence, his words correspond to those of Jesus, that it is the merciful who will be shown mercy. Mount 5. 7. Compare Mount 6. 12. 18. 32-35. When brought into judgment by God, those who have been merciful, showing pity or compassion, and giving active aid to those in need, will, in turn, be shown mercy by God, and thus their mercy will in effect triumph over any adverse judgment that might otherwise be leveled against them. As the proverb states, he that is showing favor to the lowly one is lending to Jehovah, and his treatment he will repay to him. PR 19. 17 The point made by James is corroborated by many other texts. Compare Job 31. 16-23, 32. PS 37. 21, 26. 112. 5. PR 14. 21. 17. 5. 21. 13. 28. 27. 2T1. 16, 18. Heb 13. 16. The mercy of God's high priest. The book of Hebrews explains why Jesus, as the high priest far greater than any priest of the Aaronic line, had to become a man, suffer, and die. Consequently he was obliged to become like his brothers in all respects, that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, in order to offer propitiatory sacrifice for the sins of the people. Having suffered under test, he is able to come to the aid of those who are being put to the test. Heb 2. 17, 18 Because of having the record of Jesus' life, his words and deeds, those addressing themselves to God through Jesus can do so with confidence. For we have as high priest, not one who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tested in all respects like ourselves, but without sin. Let us, therefore, approach with freeness of speech to the throne of undeserved kindness, that we may obtain mercy and find undeserved kindness for help at the right time. Heb 4. 15, 16. Jesus sacrificing his own life was an outstanding act of mercy and love. In his heavenly position as high priest, he gave evidence of his mercifulness, as in his dealings with Paul Saul, showing him mercy because of Paul's ignorance. Paul states, nevertheless, the reason why I was shown mercy was that by means of me as the foremost case Christ Jesus might demonstrate all his long-suffering for a sample of those who are going to rest their faith on him for everlasting life. 1T1. 13-16 Even as Jesus' Father, Jehovah God, showed mercy many times to Israel in saving them from their enemies, freeing them from their oppressors, and bringing them into a peaceful, prosperous state, so, too, Christians may have firm hope in the mercy to be expressed through God's Son. Hence Jude writes, keep yourselves in God's love, while you are waiting for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ with everlasting life in view. Jude 21 God's wonderful mercy through Christ encourages true Christians not to give up in their ministry and to carry out textoi acute miritra longo. Maribal 379 Principal difference between charis and ila is that charis expresses especially the idea of a free and undeserved gift, thus emphasizing the free-heartedness and generosity of the giver, whereas ila stresses the merciful response to the needs of those afflicted or disadvantaged. Thus, Kadashra's undeserved kindness was shown by God to his own Son when he kindly gave ris to him the name that is above every other name. PHP 2. 9 This kindness was motivated not by pity, but by God's loving generosity. See kindness. Madni Red Rebellion. A son of Ezra mentioned in the genealogy of the tribe of Judah. Mad had an Egyptian wife, Bithia the daughter of Pharaoh, by whom Mad had sons. 1ch4. 1, 17, 18 The Jewish wife mentioned in verse the 18th of may have been another wife of Mad. Moth. 1. One of the head priests accompanying Zerubbabel from Babylon to Jerusalem in 537 BCE NE 12. 1-7 A priestly paternal house of the next generation is named Marioth, and it is possible that Mamuth was its founder. NE 12. 15 The names are rather similar as written in Hebrew characters. 2. Son of Irijah and a prominent priest in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah. When Ezra and a Jewish remnant came to Jerusalem from Babylon in 468 BCE, Memuth was among the priests into whose hands they proceeded to weigh out the silver and the gold in the utensils in the house of Jehovah. Ezra 31-34. Memuth was a descendant of Hakkoz, some of whose descendants could not establish their genealogy. Ez 2. 61, 62. But that the division of the family to which he belonged could verify its lineage is evident, since Memuth shared in priestly functions. He also took part in doing repair work on Jerusalem's wall under Nehemiah's supervision. Ne 3. 4, 21. 3. A priest, or the forefather of one of those attesting by seal the trustworthy arrangement of Nehemiah's day. Ne 9. 38. 10. 5. 4. An Israelite among the sons of Bani who had accepted foreign wives, but sent them away along with sons in Ezra's day. Ez 10. 25, 34, 36, 44. Mirez. One of the 7 princes whom Ahasuerus consulted when Vashti disobeyed him. Ez 1. 14. Semi Muckan. Murai middle dot per quarreling. 1. A place in the vicinity of the Israelite wilderness encampment at Rephidim. It was there that Jehovah provided a miraculous supply of water when Moses struck the rock in Horeb with his rod. Moses then called the site Massa, meaning testing. Trial, and Meribah, meaning quarreling. These names were commemorative of Israel's quarreling with Moses and its testing of God on account of the lack of water. Acts 17. 1-7. 2. The name Meribah was later also given to a location near Kadesh, the reason for the name likewise being Israel's quarreling with Moses and Jehovah about the lack of water. New 20. 1-13. Unlike the place near Rephidim, where the Israelites encamped less than 2 months after coming out of Egypt. Text 16. 1. 17. 1. 19. 1. This Meribah did not bear the name Massa. The scriptures sometimes distinguish it from the other location by referring to the waters of Meribah. PS 106. 32. Or the waters of Meribah at Kadesh. New 27. 14. 32. 51. However, at Psalm 81. 7. The reference to Jehovah's examining Israel by the waters of Meribah may allude to the incident at Meribah near Rephidim. Compared to 33. 8. Moses and Aaron failed to sanctify Jehovah in connection with the miraculous provision of water at Meribah in the Kadesh area. Therefore they lost the privilege of entering the Promised Land. This event seems to have occurred in the 40th year of Israel's wilderness wanderings. New 20. 1, 9-13, 22-28. 33. 38, 39. Meribath Kadesh Merai middle. Bath Kadesh quarreling at Kadesh. A southern limit of Israel's territory as seen by Ezekiel in vision. Es 47. 13, 19. 48. 28. The name Meribath Kadesh alludes to Israel's quarreling with Jehovah at Otex to acute Miritra Longo, Meradak 380 Meradak Me'o middle. Dak. The Hebrew form for Marduk, the most important Babylonian god, whose downfall was foretold to coincide with Babylon's overthrow. Jah 50. 2. The Babylonian kings Merodach Baladanissa 39. 1 and Evil Merodach 2 Ka 25. 27 were undoubtedly named after this god. With the rise of Babylon to prominence, because of King Hammurabi's making it the capital of Babylonia, Merodach likewise increased in importance. The attributes of earlier gods came to be assigned to him, and it is thought that the Babylonian priests altered the mythological accounts to make Merodach the slayer of Tiamat and the creator of the world and of man. Babylonian texts identify Merodach as the son of either god presiding over the watery element, the consort of Subhanatu, and the father of Nebo. The kingship over Babylon was closely associated with the image of Merodach at his temple, Esagila, for the rulers of Babylon were not installed by coronation, but became kings by taking hold of the hand of Merodach. The ceremony was repeated each year at the New Year's festival. Even during the time that Assyria controlled Babylonia, the kings of Assyria were required to come to the city of Babylon each year for the New Year's festival and legalize their claim to the throne by taking hold of Merodach's hand. Jeremiah the prophet, with respect to Babylon's fall, foretold that Merodach would become terrified. This came true in the sense that Merodach proved to be unable to preserve the dignity of the Babylonian world power, and since the conquerors of Babylon were worshippers of other deities, his future became very uncertain, filled with foreboding. J 50. 2.